Hey everybody, so we are continuing along with our season previews, and today we're talking about the Colorado Avalanche, a team with a ton of hype surrounding them coming into this season. Before we get into the video, I just quickly want to say if you're not yet a subscriber to this channel, please hit that subscribe button and follow along for all the hockey content all season long. And if you enjoy this video, please give it a thumbs up and hit that like button. That really helps out a lot. So, Colorado, this is weird territory for the Colorado Avalanche heading into this year. They are expected to be really good. This is a team with a ton of hype surrounding them, with a lineup now that you look at and you go, this should not only be a playoff team, this should be one of the better teams in the Western Conference. And we're going to have to wait and see if the team and the roster and their play matches the hype or not. But the big story for Colorado right now is that Mikko Rantanen, their big RFA, who had 87 points last season as a 21/22-year-old, is not signed. He is still a restricted free agent. He has not come to terms with a deal with Colorado, and that's kind of the big thing right now with this team is why isn't Mikko Rantanen signed? And it's not a salary cap issue, because if you look on Cap Friendly right now, the Colorado Avalanche have over $15 million in cap space. So it is not a salary cap issue. Even if Rantanen gets $10 million a year, they can easily afford that right now. So I'm really not sure why Mikko Rantanen hasn't been signed yet, but I fully expect him to be signed before the start of the season. He's just too important of a player not to be. He had, like I said, he had 87 points last year. He's a major part of not only the first line of this team, but one of the best lines in the entire NHL with Nathan MacKinnon and Gabe Landeskog. This team now has expectations. This team now has some real pressure on it, which they haven't had in a while. The Colorado's been a team that from most of this decade haven't been very good. They had to go through a full rebuild. The last couple years, you've kind of started to see the fruits of that rebuild a little bit. They've made the playoffs each of the past 2 years, but as a wild card team. And, it was kind of a good, feel-good story that they got into the playoffs. Now, just making the playoffs isn't going to cut it for this year's Colorado team. Being a wild card team isn't going to cut it for this year's Colorado team. They have real expectations. They have real pressure. They are expected to compete for this division. They've got a ton of young talent in there. They've got a lot of, obviously one of the best lines in the league. They made a lot of offseason moves to really try and bolster this lineup and not only go from being a wild card playoff team to being a legitimate threat in the Western Conference. And now they actually have to go out on the ice and do it. So there's some real pressure there this year. And they're not going to be able to be the team that they want to be and that they're expected to be without Mikko Rantanen in that lineup. You take him out of that lineup, and all of a sudden there's a massive offensive hole on the right side and on the wings. So you need Mikko Rantanen there. Colorado knows that. Mikko Rantanen knows that, which is probably why they're still negotiating about a contract. But at the end of the day, I fully expect Mikko Rantanen to be there at the start of the season, or at the very least within the first month. There is no way they are going to let him miss more than that because they need him. He's an important part of this team and they need him. So let's take a look at the lineup here for the Avalanche. For lineups, I use cap-friendly depth charts and daily face-off line combinations and kind of look at both of those and make a usually just go with what they have. If there's a difference, I'll pick one, or I'll just kind of, if there's something that I see that I really want to switch around, I'll switch it around. But for the most part, I use those as a basis for putting the lineups together. Here for Colorado, obviously the top line, assuming Rantanen gets signed, which I think he will. Top line is one of the best lines in the entire NHL. Gabe Landeskog, Nathan MacKinnon, and Mikko Rantanen. The point production from them last year was unreal, and that should continue. They're all 26 or younger. Landeskog is the oldest guy on that line, and he's 26 years old. This line should stay together for years to come and should be one of the best producing lines in the NHL for years to come. Second line now, Andrei Burakovsky. They traded him for him from Washington, so he's coming over now. He never really found his footing with the Capitals, fell out of favor with the coaching staff, and found himself dropped in the lineup, actually all the way down to the fourth line at one point in Washington. He's getting a fresh start now with Colorado, and he's going to get top 6 minutes. They are looking to him to be a goal-scoring winger for them. He is going to get top 6 minutes. He is going to get the chance to produce offensively, kind of a chance that he never really got, buried in Washington's obviously elite lineup for a number of years. It's Burakovsky's time to shine. He's either going to flame out really bad and probably be out of the league soon, or he's going to take advantage of this opportunity and become a 25 or so goal scorer with Colorado. Nazem Kadri in the middle, coming over in the Tyson Barrie deal with Toronto. So obviously that's a new second line center for the Avalanche, and we'll see what he can do. Lately, he had been playing more of a third line center role in Toronto, where he hasn't had to put up as many points offensively. So it'll be interesting to see now if he can, how he does offensively in a top 6 role as opposed to playing that third line center shutdown type role. But he's going to get a chance for sure. And then Tyson Jost, great player there, only 21. I think we see significantly more offense from him this year than we did last year. He only had 26 points last year, but he was much further down the lineup last year than he will be this year. Third line, Matt Calvert, JT Compher, and Jonas Donskoy. Calvert had a tremendous year, I think, for them as a bottom 6 forward. Brought a ton of grit and toughness and just scrappiness to the lineup for Colorado last year. Compher, pretty solid player, especially in a third line role. He had 33 points last year. Probably can do even more than that this year. Donskoy now, kind of always been that third line type guy, but a guy who can score. He can give you 15 to 20-ish goals in a season. So solid, third line there for Colorado. And that leaves the fourth line, Colin Wilson, veteran guy at this point, but pretty good player still. Pierre-Edouard Bellemare coming over from Vegas, and Matt Nieto to round out the fourth line. Wouldn't expect a ton of offense from that line, but still a solid fourth line that can give you quality minutes at least. Overall for this forward group, obviously, offensively, they're heavily reliant on that top line. But when you have a top line like that, it's okay to be heavily reliant on that line because, I think McKinnon's going to score 100 points this year. I think Rantanen scores 90-plus at least this year, if not 100 along with McKinnon. And Landeskog can probably give you 80 points. So they're going to get offense from that top line, assuming health, obviously. The second line, I think, is really interesting. This second line is going to play a huge role in how good this Avalanche team can be. If this second line, if Burakovsky can become a 20-25 goal scorer, if Kadri can put up 50 to 60 points, if Tyson Jost can become a 20 goal scorer, if those guys can produce offensively, this is a team that could win the Central Division. If those guys don't produce offensively and they're really heavily reliant on only that top line to do a majority of their scoring, then we could see another wild card type year from Colorado, and just lack of offense could be a problem. But if those guys produce, we could see a division-winning team here. The third line, I think, is a very solid third line, and the fourth line, it's not anything spectacular, but it does the job. Moving on to the defense now. Tyson Barrie is no longer there, and I definitely think that is a hit to their defense core. Tyson Barrie's a good player, and losing him is going to hurt. However, they certainly have two young players who are very, very ready to step up and take over, and that is Sam Girard, who will probably be playing with Eric Johnson on the top pair, and Cale Makar, who will probably be playing with Nikita Zadorov on the second pair. Those two have the potential to be star players. Sam Girard, 27 points in 82 games last year, pretty good player. Cale Makar, I've talked a bit about Makar on this channel already. Cale Makar, I think, can be a superstar in the NHL. He's my pick for Rookie of the Year this year. I watched him play at UMass Amherst in college. I saw him play quite a bit. Incredible player. Fantastic skater, great with the puck. Physical for his smaller size. He's only 5'11", 187 pounds. He plays physically and is not afraid to hit. Will throw his body around if he needs to. Great offensive mind, great offensive skills. I think Cale Makar is going to be an absolute superstar, and I'll probably talk a lot more about him throughout the season because if I was ever in love with a hockey player, it's Cale Makar and just the kind of player that he is. He's going to be phenomenal. But rounding out the bottom pair, the third pair is Kevin Connaughton. I don't know exactly how you say it. I've heard both. But Connaughton's coming over from, I believe, Arizona. And then they've lost Patrick Nemeth, so that kind of leaves a hole on that bottom pair. I have Ryan Graves in there now. I don't know necessarily. I think Graves has a chance to win that spot. He played 26 games last year. He's a big body, physical young defenseman, a guy that I really like a lot. So I think he has a chance to win that spot. It also could be Mark Barberio. It could be Callie Rosen. Those are two guys I have as extra defensemen right now that could potentially come in and take that spot. Goaltender, this is Philip Grubauer's team. Varlamov is gone. He's off to the island in New York with the Islanders. And this is Philip Grubauer's team. Backing him up, I see Pavel Francouz. I don't know how you say that. I've never heard of this guy, honestly. I was thinking before doing this video, I was like, who the hell is Colorado's backup goalie at this point? And both Daily Faceoff and Cap Friendly have Pavel Francouz as the backup goaltender. So I guess it's his job to lose, I guess. I don't know anything about him. I've never heard of him before looking up the lineup for this video. This is Philip Grubauer's team. They're going to lean on him a lot. This is going to be his first year, I think, as a full-time starter. He did take over at the end of last season and was the starter in the playoffs, but this is his year to be a full-time starter, and this is his team. As far as extra players go, obviously, I talked about Mark Barberio and Callie Rosen potentially being on that bottom pair in place of Ryan Graves. Connaughton's probably a lock for the lineup, but Graves is the one that we'll see. They also have Ian Cole on defense. He's on the injured list right now, so I don't know if or when he'll be ready for them this year. He's listed as an injured guy right now, so I assume he's probably going to start the year on IR. But once he gets healthy, he gives them another veteran, solid defensive defenseman that could definitely come in on that bottom pair and help out. As far as forwards go, there's some interesting guys to talk about here. Valery Nichushkin, he's coming over from Dallas, obviously. He didn't turn out the way that the Dallas Stars wanted him to. He's coming over to Colorado now, and will probably get a chance to make the team out of camp, depending on how good of a preseason he has. So he could end up on one of the wings here if he does get into the lineup. Also, Vladislav Kamenev is going to be a guy trying to make the lineup. 23 years old. Was a part of the massive trade between Colorado, Nashville, and Ottawa that moved so many players around. Duchesne, Turris, first-round picks. That massive trade we all remember from a couple years ago. Kamenev was part of that, so he's going to be looking to make the team. And also, Sheldon Dries and A.J. Greer both played a decent amount of time at the NHL level last year as bottom six forwards. So we could definitely see them in that role again. If they lose a fourth-line type guy, you could see one of those guys step up. So overall, I think this is a pretty darn good lineup. Obviously, they're still pretty reliant on that top line, but when your top line is that good, you can rely on them. The defense isn't outstanding, but I think the bottom pair could be a little better, but honestly, that's nitpicking at this point. I love Makar. I think Sam Girard's going to have a big year offensively. Zadorov's a good defensive defenseman and tough guy, and Eric Johnson is a solid veteran at this point who can play at both ends of the ice. So their top four, I think, is really good defensively. I think the bottom pair could be a little better, but that's fine. They do have depth. They've got good depth defensively. They've definitely got some guys that can throw in. They can throw in if injuries do happen. Forward-wise, secondary scoring could potentially be an issue, but if they get the production they're expecting out of certain guys, they're going to be fine. Grubauer, a little bit of a question mark in goal. He's never been a full-time starter before, but this is his team. They're going with him. He looked pretty darn good in the playoffs last year, so I'm not too worried about that. This is a team I fully expect to make the playoffs. I think should compete to be one of the best teams in the Western Conference. And there's real expectations for Colorado this year. No more getting by as a borderline playoff team. No more, oh, wow, they made the playoffs. That's a really, really nice to see. No, you're expected to make the playoffs now. You're expected to be a real threat. So we'll see how the season turns out, but I have a lot of interest in watching this team this year because I want to see how they handle it and how they do. And I'm a pretty big fan of this team as far as, obviously I'm a Bruins fan first and foremost, but as far as other teams around the league go that I like to watch and I like to root for, Colorado is definitely one of them. And now with Cale Makar on the team, I am going to be watching them closely this year. So we'll see how they do. Like, comment, share, subscribe, follow on social media. All those links are down in the description below. If you'd like to further support the channel, the links to our Patreon and merchandise store are down in the description as well. Keep spreading the word about this channel. Let's keep this thing growing. Thank you very much for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video, and I'll talk to you guys soon.